The lamplight caught the sawdust hanging in the air. James Cooper ran his weathered hands along the reclaimed oak, feeling for imperfections the way his grandfather had taught him 40 years ago. November cold pressed against the garage walls, but inside the workshop glowed warm as a kept promise. The door panel had been thrown away 3 weeks ago. James found it behind a demolished Victorian on Maple Street. Solid oak beneath decades of paint. Now it was becoming a dining table. His hands moved with practiced certainty, fitting joints that would hold for another century. Daddy. Emma stood in the doorway, 9 years old in pajamas 2 sizes too big, her thumb tucked into the frayed sleeve. She watched him work the way she did most evenings, quiet as snowfall, learning without asking. James looked up and smiled. Should be sleeping, sweetheart. I like watching you make things beautiful. He set down his plane and beckoned her closer. She padded across the concrete floor in worn socks, standing beside him at the workbench. The table surface gleamed in the lamplight, smooth as river stone despite its humble origin. See how the grain runs here? He guided her small hand along the wood. This tree grew for maybe 80 years before someone cut it down. Then it was a door for another 60. Now it gets to be something new. Emma traced the grain patterns like reading Braille. Because you saved it. Because it deserved another life. She nodded, understanding running deeper than words. James had been saving things since her mother died 3 years ago. Furniture from dumpsters. Lumber from demolition sites. Himself. Maybe. Though he never said that part out loud. Go on to bed now, he said gently. School tomorrow. Emma hugged his waist and disappeared back into the house. James returned to his work. Alone again, with the lamp and the wood, and the cold pressing close. His children slept warm inside. That was what mattered. That was everything. He whispered to the oak as he smoothed its surface. You deserved another life. The wood grain caught the light like it was listening. Like it understood he was talking about more than furniture. Outside. The neighborhood settled into darkness. Only his garage glowed, a small beacon of lamplight and sawdust and stubborn hope. James worked until midnight, then locked the workshop and went inside. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Tonight. He had made something beautiful from what others discarded. Tonight, that was enough. Dawn broke gray and thin across the kitchen. James divided the last of the milk between 2 bowls of oatmeal, adding extra water to stretch the meal. Emma and Lucas sat at the second-hand table, backpacks ready by the door. Lucas's toes pressed against the canvas of his shoes. 7 years old and growing faster than James could afford. The boy didn't complain, but James saw how he curled his feet under his chair. Eat up, James said, setting the bowls down. Emma picked up her spoon, then paused. There's a field trip next week, to the Science Museum. The permission slip sat on the counter. $15. James had read it 3 times, doing mathematics that never came out right. $15 might as well be $1,500 when the checking account held $42 and the heating bill was due. We'll see, baby. Emma's face didn't change, but something dimmed behind her eyes. She'd learned not to hope too hard. That knowledge sat heavy in James's chest. A weight no amount of reclaimed wood could lighten. Lucas scraped his bowl clean and stood. Bus is coming. They grabbed their backpacks and headed out. James watched from the window as they climbed aboard, Emma helping her brother up the high steps. The bus pulled away, trailing exhaust into the cold morning. James washed the dishes and pulled on his work jacket. Time to hunt. The salvage yards opened at 8. James knew the schedules the way other men knew sports statistics. Tuesday and Thursday, the construction dumpsters got emptied. Wednesday, the demolition crews started new sites. He'd learned to move in the margins, finding value in what others threw away. He walked 6 blocks to a house being gutted for renovation. The dumpster overflowed with weathered planks and window frames. James approached carefully. Respectful. He'd been run off sites before by contractors who thought he was stealing. Today, no one challenged him. He selected 3 planks of old-growth pine, checking for rotten nails. Good wood. Solid. Someone's floor for 100 years. Now garbage. He carried them home 2 at a time. Muscles remembering this routine. On his 3rd trip, a car slowed beside him. Silver sedan. Clean and new. The driver was a woman in her 40s. Professional clothes. Dark hair pulled back. She watched him carry the weathered planks. Her expression thoughtful. Their eyes met for a moment. James nodded politely. She nodded back, then drove on. He thought nothing of it. People passed through the neighborhood all the time. He had wood to carry and furniture to build and children to feed. The world kept turning, indifferent to his struggles. Back home. He stacked the pine in the garage and started sketching a design for side tables. His stomach growled. He'd skipped breakfast again, stretching the oatmeal for the kids. He drank water instead and returned to his work. The lamplight would glow again tonight. The sawdust would hang like snow. And somewhere out there, his children were learning fractions and spelling, while their shoes wore through and field trips remained. Dreams on unsigned permission slips. James picked up his pencil and kept drawing. What else could a man do but keep building? Saturday afternoon light fell weak through the garage door. James worked with the door raised despite the cold, needing the natural illumination for detail work. The bookshelf was taking shape, crafted from century-old barn siding he'd found 3 weeks ago. His hands moved without conscious thought. Measure twice. Cut once. His grandfather's voice, accented and certain, lived in his fingers. The old man had learned carpentry in the old country, brought that knowledge across an ocean in calloused hands. James had learned in his grandfather's garage, much like this one. Summer afternoons smelling of sawdust and pipe tobacco. Learning that good work required patience and precision. That a man's character showed in how he fitted joints. Then life had scattered those lessons. Factory work at 18. Steady pay and benefits. Marriage at 22 to Sarah. Dark-eyed and laughing. Emma born when he was 35. Lucas 2 years later. Good years. Normal years. The kind you don't appreciate until they're gone. Sarah got sick when Lucas was 4. Cancer. Aggressive and merciless. The treatments bought them 18 months and emptied their savings. She died on a Tuesday morning with ice on the windows and James holding her hand. He'd kept working at the factory, kept the kids in daycare, kept moving because stopping meant drowning. Then 18 months ago, the plant relocated overseas. 2 weeks' notice and a severance package that lasted 3 months. He could have moved in with his brother in Ohio. Could have taken more assistance than the minimum he reluctantly accepted. Could have admitted defeat and started over somewhere cheaper. Instead, he'd chosen this. The garage workshop, the salvage materials, building furniture piece by piece, selling to neighbors for barely enough to survive. Pride. Maybe. Stubbornness. Certainly. But also something else. A need to create instead of merely endure. The silver sedan appeared again, parking across the street. James looked up from his work. The same woman from 3 days ago. She sat in her car, watching him measure and cut with professional attention. This time she got out. She crossed the street with purposeful steps, professional but not aggressive. Mid-40s, he guessed, with kind eyes and an expensive coat. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, stopping at the edge of his driveway. No interruption. James set down his square. "Can I help you?" "I'm Angela Hartfield. I've been admiring your work." Heat crept up his neck. "Just weekend projects." "May I?" She gestured toward the bookshelf. James nodded. Angela stepped into the garage, moving carefully around tools and lumber scraps. She examined the bookshelf the way a jeweler might examine a diamond, running fingers along the joints, checking the fit and finish. "Where did you train?" she asked. "My grandfather. Learned at his bench when I was a kid? This is exceptional work." She met his eyes. "I'm an interior designer. I specialize in sustainable luxury pieces. Your craftsmanship is extraordinary." James didn't know how to respond. No one had called his work extraordinary before. Decent. Maybe. Good enough. But extraordinary belonged to other people in other workshops. I'd like to talk to you about showcasing your work. Angela continued. Would you be interested? The question hung in the cold air between them. James felt something shift in his chest, hope and terror mixing into vertigo. I appreciate that, but I'm pretty busy here. Angela reached into her coat and pulled out a business card. Think about it. I'll come back Tuesday for your answer. No pressure. She handed him the card and walked back to her sedan. James stood holding it, reading the embossed letters. Angela Hartfield. Sustainable luxury design. A website. A phone number. Emma appeared in the doorway to the house. Who was that lady, Daddy? Just someone passing through, sweetheart. Wonder, but he watched Angela's taillights disappear down the street. And something in his chest kept shifting. The card felt heavy in his hand, heavier than wood, heavier than tools. He slipped it into his pocket and returned to work. But his mind kept wandering to that word, extraordinary, the following Saturday. James woke early and couldn't get back to sleep. The business card sat on his nightstand where he'd left it every night that week, reading it before bed like a prayer or a curse. He made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, watching dawn creep across the yard. Extraordinary. The word kept circling back, refusing to settle. At 9 o'clock. The garage door was already open when Angela's sedan pulled up. James had been expecting her, dreading her, hoping she'd come. His stomach twisted itself into knots. Good morning, Angela said, walking up the driveway. I hope I'm not too early. I'm usually working by now anyway. She smiled and gestured toward the bookshelf, now nearly complete. You've made progress. Keeps me busy. Angela walked around the piece slowly, examining it from all angles. She crouched down to check the base joints, stood on her toes to inspect the crown molding he'd added. Professional scrutiny that made James's palms sweat. Do you have other pieces? She asked. He showed her the completed dining table, 2 side tables, a bench, a mirror frame, all crafted from reclaimed materials, all carrying the marks of their former lives alongside his careful restoration. Angela examined each piece with the same thorough attention. She pulled out her phone and took photographs, asking permission first. James nodded, uncomfortable but allowing it. Where do you sell these? She asked. Neighbors mostly. Mrs. Chen bought the bench. The community center took a table. What did you charge? James named his prices. Angela's eyebrows rose, but she said nothing, just nodded and kept photographing. Finally, she set her phone down and looked at him directly. Mr. Cooper, I run a showroom downtown that specializes in sustainable luxury furniture. My clients are young professionals, older couples downsizing, anyone who values environmental consciousness and quality craftsmanship. Sounds like a nice business. It is, and your work would fit perfectly. She paused, choosing words carefully. I'd like to showcase a collection of your pieces. We'd call it Reclaimed Origins. Give each piece a story card explaining its history. The environmental angle is very strong right now. James's throat went dry. I don't have enough pieces for a collection. We'd planned the reveal for mid-January. That gives you 2 months to build inventory. Angela pulled out her tablet, showed him her website. This is my showroom. These are the price points my clients expect. James looked at the numbers and felt dizzy. Coffee tables for $2,400, dining sets for $6,000. His completed table was worth more than 3 months of his current income. I can't ask those kinds of prices, he said. You wouldn't be asking. I would. And my clients pay for quality and conscience combined. A car passed on the street. A dog barked somewhere. James's mind raced through calculations and possibilities and 1,000 reasons this couldn't work. What would you need from me? He asked quietly. Angela explained the terms. Consignment initially. 40% commission for the showroom. If sales warranted, they'd move to commission pieces. She'd handle marketing, photography, client relations. He'd create. I'd need at least 8 pieces for a proper showcase, she said. Can you do that by January? If I work evenings and weekends, yeah. Then we have a partnership. If you're willing. James looked at his garage workshop, his salvaged materials, his scarred hands, looked at the house behind him where his children slept, where Emma's unsigned permission slip still sat on the counter. I need to think about it, he said. Of course. Angela stood, tucked her tablet away. I'll come back Tuesday. Take your time. Mr. Cooper. But I want you to know something. She met his eyes with absolute certainty. This isn't charity. This isn't me doing you a favor. I don't make bad business decisions. Your work is exceptional, and my clients will pay accordingly. This is partnership. Equal benefit. After she left, James stood alone in his garage for a long time. The bookshelf waited for final sanding. The morning stretched ahead, hours to fill with work and worry. Emma appeared, still in pajamas. She came back? Yeah, baby. She really likes your furniture. I guess she does. Emma walked to the dining table and ran her hand along its surface. It's beautiful. Daddy. The most beautiful table in the whole world. James's throat tightened. He pulled his daughter close and held on. Tuesday came wrapped in the first real cold of winter. James sent the kids to school and sat at his kitchen table, Angela's business card in front of him like evidence at a trial. He'd spent 4 days researching her online. The showroom was legitimate, successful, featured in design magazines. Her clients included tech executives, doctors, environmental nonprofits. She wasn't lying about the price points or the market, which made his fear more complicated. What if he failed? What if his work sat unsold, gathering dust in her beautiful showroom while she regretted her kindness? What if he embarrassed himself in front of people who understood quality in ways he'd never learned? The factory had been simple. Show up, work hard, collect a paycheck. No one asked if you were extraordinary. No one cared about your vision. You assembled parts and went home. This was different. This was putting his name on something and asking the world to judge its worth. This was saying out loud that he might be good enough. James made coffee he didn't drink and stared at the card until the words blurred. At noon, Lucas came home from school early. Half day. James had forgotten. The boy's shoes had developed a hole in the sole, visible when he walked. How was school? James asked. Fine. Lucas dropped his backpack and opened the refrigerator. Can I have a snack? Apple or crackers? Lucas chose crackers and sat at the table. James noticed how he tucked his feet under the chair, hiding the worn shoes. We need to get you new shoes soon, James said. These are okay. Lucas. Really, Dad. They still work. The heating bill arrived in the afternoon mail. $93. Due in 2 weeks. James had 42 in checking, and maybe 20 in change scattered around the house. He set the bill on the counter next to Emma's permission slip. 2 reminders of the gap between love and provision. Emma came home at 3:30 with a book order form. She handed it to James without comment, but he saw hope flicker and die in her eyes when he said, "Maybe next month, sweetheart." That night he tried to sleep, but couldn't. The card glowed in the darkness of his bedroom like something radioactive. He got up at 2 in the morning and went to his workshop, turned on the lamp, ran his hands over the bookshelf. Was it extraordinary? Or just good enough to fool someone being kind? Tuesday afternoon arrived before he had an answer. Angela pulled up at 4 o'clock exactly. James was in the garage, pretending to work, actually just waiting. Mr. Cooper, she said warmly, have you had time to think? James opened his mouth to decline. The words were ready. Practiced. Thank you, but no. I'm not ready. Maybe someday. Emma burst out of the house at a run. Miss Angela, she called, skidding to a stop beside them. Daddy's furniture is the most beautiful in the whole world. Everyone should see it. Angela crouched down to Emma's level. I think so too. What's your name? Emma. I'm 9. It's very nice to meet you. Emma. Angela looked up at James, her expression gentle. You have a wonderful daughter. I know. Angela stood, addressed James directly. I'm not offering charity, Mr. Cooper. I'm offering partnership. Your work deserves a bigger audience than this neighborhood, but it's your choice. I'll respect whatever you decide. She handed him a new card with her cell number written on the back. Call me when you're ready. No deadline, no pressure. After she left, Emma looked up at James with those dark eyes so much like her mother's. She's nice, Emma said. Yeah, baby, she is. Are you going to let her show your furniture? James knelt down, eye level with his daughter. I'm scared it won't be good enough. Emma touched his face with small hands. It's always good enough, Daddy. You just don't see it. That night, watching his children sleep, James saw Emma's worn backpack and Lucas's patched jacket hanging by the door. He saw the unsigned permission slip, the heating bill, the shoes with holes. He saw his pride holding them hostage. The question wasn't whether his work was extraordinary. The question was whether refusing help was courage or cowardice, whether staying small kept them safe or kept them struggling. James went to the drawer where he'd hidden Angela's first card, stared at it while lamplight flickered. The old James whispered, Stay hidden. Stay safe. The father James whispered something different. Choose them. Choose hope. Choose the chance to give them more than you have now. He left the card on the counter where he'd see it in the morning. Tomorrow he would decide. Tonight, he just needed to sleep. The phone call from school came at 10:30 Wednesday morning. Lucas had fallen during recess. Nothing serious. But the nurse wanted James to know his son's shoes might have contributed to the stumble. The sole is completely separated, the nurse said kindly. He's been walking on one good shoe, essentially. I wanted to make sure you were aware. James gripped the phone. I am now. Thank you. After he hung up, shame settled over him like winter fog. He'd seen the shoes deteriorating. He'd told Lucas new ones were coming soon. Soon kept stretching further away, while his son walked on worn canvas and separated soles. That afternoon, James picked Lucas up early. The school counselor stopped him in the hallway, her voice gentle and careful. Mr. Cooper, we have resources available if families need assistance with clothing or school supplies. There's no shame in accepting help. We're managing, James said. Of course. I just wanted you to know the option exists. Walking home. Lucas was quiet. James noticed how the boy stepped carefully, favoring his left foot. New shoes this weekend, James said. Okay. I mean it this time. Lucas nodded but didn't argue. They walked in silence until Lucas spoke again. Voice small. Am I in trouble? No, buddy. Never. This is on me, not you. That evening, Emma developed a fever. Nothing dangerous. Just a cold turning rough. But she needed medicine. And medicine cost money James had already mentally allocated to the heating bill. He counted change from the jar in the kitchen. $4.70. Checked his wallet. $18. Enough for the smallest bottle of children's ibuprofen if he bought the generic. At the pharmacy. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead while James counted exact change at the register. The cashier smiled kindly, didn't comment on the pennies and nickels sliding across the counter. He bought the smallest bottle and walked home through gathering dusk. He passed Angela's showroom by chance, taking a different route. The lights glowed warm against the cold night. Through the window, he saw a couple examining a coffee table. Beautiful reclaimed wood with a brass price tag visible even from the sidewalk. $2,400. James stopped walking, stood on the sidewalk staring at that table. His completed dining table was better joinery, better finish. He knew it with craftsman's certainty. His table could command that price if someone would just see it. But pride had kept it in his garage, selling to neighbors for $200. At home, He gave Emma medicine and tucked her into bed. She fell asleep quickly, fever making her small face flushed. James kissed her forehead and went to check on Lucas. His son was sitting on the bed examining his ruined shoes. He looked up when James entered. "It's okay, Dad." Lucas held up the shoes. "I can tape the sole back on. It'll work." Those words, that acceptance, that 7-year-old resignation to making do with broken things. Something fundamental broke in James's chest. He sat beside Lucas and pulled his son close. "You shouldn't have to tape your shoes. Buddy, you deserve new ones. You deserve field trips and book orders, and not worrying whether we'll make it." "We always make it," Lucas said simply. "Making it isn't enough." After Lucas fell asleep, James went to the kitchen drawer, retrieved Angela's card from where he'd left it that morning. Still undecided, still afraid. He stared at it while lamplight flickered overhead. His pride whispered its familiar refrain. "Wait. Save face. Handle this alone. You've always managed before." But his children's faces whispered something different. Emma's unsigned permission slip. Lucas's taped shoes. The gap between love and provision growing wider every month. Pride wasn't protecting them anymore. Pride was imprisoning them. James picked up his phone, stared at Angela's number written in neat handwriting. His thumb hovered over the screen, doubt and determination wrestling for control. Tomorrow, he promised himself. Tomorrow morning. First thing. But he left the card beside the phone. Left it where he couldn't ignore it. Left it waiting like a door he was finally ready to open. Outside, winter deepened. Inside, James sat at his kitchen table in the lamplight, holding his phone and thinking about shoes that needed tape and permission slips that stayed unsigned and the word extraordinary that refused to settle. The wood had deserved another life. Maybe he did too. Thursday morning. James waited until the school bus pulled away. Then he picked up the phone before fear could stop him. Angela answered on the second ring. "This is Angela." "Miss Hartfield, this is James Cooper." "James?" Her voice warmed. "How are you?" "I'm calling about your offer." He paused, steadied himself. "If it still stands, I'd like to accept." "It absolutely stands. I'm so glad you called." They arranged to meet that afternoon at her showroom. James dressed in his one good shirt, the blue one Sarah had bought him for their last anniversary. It still fit, barely. The showroom occupied a converted warehouse in the design district. Exposed brick walls, high ceilings, natural light flooding through industrial windows. Furniture displayed like art, each piece given space to breathe. Angela met him at the door. "Welcome. Come in." James stepped inside, boots loud on polished concrete. The furniture around him was beautiful, purposeful, expensive. He felt suddenly aware of his calloused hands, his second-hand shirt, the gap between this world and his garage workshop. "I want to show you something," Angela said. She led him to a featured wall, currently empty except for track lighting and a hand-painted sign. Reclaimed origins in elegant script. Still drying. "This is your space," Angela said. "I've been planning the layout. 8 pieces displayed here, each with a story card explaining its history. The environmental narrative is crucial, where the wood came from, what it used to be, how you transformed it." James stared at the empty wall, his wall. Space reserved for his work in a showroom where furniture sold for more than he'd earned in months. "I don't have 8 pieces ready," he admitted. "That's why we're planning for mid-January. 2 months from now. Can you create 8 pieces in that time?" James did math in his head. "Working evenings and weekends. Sacrificing sleep. If I push hard. Yeah. Don't sacrifice quality for speed. 7 pieces are better than 8 rushed ones." Angela pulled out her tablet, showed him mock-ups of the space. His furniture photographed and displayed professionally. Story cards describing each piece's origin. A dining table, the bookshelf, 2 side tables, a mirror frame, a bench, a console table, A coffee table? I'll need materials, James said quietly. Of course. Angela opened her laptop. I'm prepared to offer an advance against future sales. $800 for materials and supplies. It comes out of your earnings when pieces sell, but it's yours now to use. $800. New shoes for Lucas, medicine for Emma, the heating bill paid, groceries that weren't stretched thin, wood purchased instead of salvaged, though he'd still prefer reclaimed materials for the environmental story. That's generous. James managed. It's business. I invest in artists I believe in. She met his eyes. And I believe in you. James, your work is exceptional. My clients will recognize that. They spent an hour discussing details, photography, marketing, the reveal event in mid-January. Angela explained everything clearly, answering his questions with patience and respect. She wrote him a check before he left. $800. His name in careful script. He folded it carefully and put it in his wallet like something precious. Driving home, James felt unsteady. Hope was terrifying when you'd learned not to trust it. But the check in his wallet was real. The featured wall was real. Angela's belief was real. That evening, he gathered Emma and Lucas at the kitchen table. I have something to tell you both. They sat quietly, watching him with Sarah's dark eyes. Miss Angela has offered me a partnership. She's going to showcase my furniture in her showroom downtown, if it sells well. This could really help us. Emma's face lit up. Really? Really, show, but I'll be working a lot of evenings to build enough pieces. I need you two to be patient with me. We're always patient, Lucas said. James pulled them both close. I know you are. You're the best kids a dad could ask for. Emma pulled back, studying his face. Will we be okay now? He wanted to promise yes. Wanted to guarantee everything would work out. But he'd learned the danger of promises you couldn't keep. We're going to work hard and find out, he said honestly. Lucas, practical as always, asked the real question. Can I get new shoes? James laughed, the sound surprising him. First real laugh in months, maybe years. It felt rusty but good. Yes, son, new shoes first thing Saturday, whatever kind you want. That night, after the children slept, James sat in his workshop with the lamp burning. The advance check sat on his workbench. Still unbelievable. $800 because someone saw value in what he created. He picked up his pencil and started sketching. A console table from reclaimed barn siding. A coffee table from old-growth pine. Pieces that told stories of transformation and second chances. Outside, winter pressed cold against the garage walls. Inside, lamplight glowed warm. Sawdust would hang like snow soon enough. But tonight, James just sat with his sketches and his hope and his laughter still echoing in his ears. The wood deserved another life. So did he. And maybe, just maybe, he was finally ready to believe it. Mid-January arrived with surprising warmth. A false spring teasing between winter storms. James stood in his garage surrounded by 8 completed pieces, each one representing 2 months of evenings and weekends. Sacrifice and vision. The work had been harder than he'd expected. Not the craftsmanship, but the vulnerability. Creating pieces meant for judgment instead of survival, art instead of necessity. Each cut of the saw felt permanent, irrevocable. Angela had visited regularly through December and early January. She photographed each piece as it neared completion, asked questions about his process, learned the stories he wanted told. She never treated him as charity. Always professional. Always respectful. The partnership had grown genuine. She taught him about market positioning and client psychology. He taught her about wood grain and joinery techniques equals sharing expertise. The Reclaimed Origins website page went live 2 weeks before the reveal. Angela's marketing generated interest. Environmental blogs shared the story. Sustainable design forums discussed his approach. James watched the attention with disbelief and terror. Opening night came on a Friday. James dressed in his good shirt. Emma and Lucas in clothes carefully chosen. They drove to the showroom together, his children pressed against the windows watching the city pass. Nervous, Emma asked, terrified. Your furniture is beautiful. Daddy. Everyone will see that. Inside, the showroom had transformed. His wall glowed with careful lighting. Each piece displayed with gallery-level attention, story cards beside each one describing origin and transformation. Dining table, crafted from 1940s factory door, reclaimed from demolition site, restored with original joinery techniques. Bookshelf, century-old barn siding, Wisconsin farmland to urban home, carrying history forward. James stood frozen. Seeing his work through strangers' eyes, it looked professional. It looked expensive. It looked like it belonged here. What do you think? Angela appeared beside him. I think I might throw up. She laughed. Normal opening night jitters. Come on. People are arriving. Clients began filtering in. Young couples, older pairs downsizing, designers bringing clients. They moved through the space with wine glasses, examining furniture, reading story cards. James hung back, uncertain of his role. Then a woman approached the bookshelf, running her fingers along the joinery with obvious appreciation. She read the story card carefully, then turned to Angela. This is extraordinary work. Who's the craftsman? Angela smiled and beckoned James over. Meet the artist. James Cooper. Artist. The word still didn't fit right, but James stepped forward. Ma'am. This piece is stunning. She touched the wood reverently. Where did you train? My grandfather taught me. Old country techniques. And you source all reclaimed materials? Yes, ma'am. Everything has a history. I just give it new purpose. They talked for 10 minutes. She asked about custom work, whether he could create a console table from specific materials she had access to. James found himself explaining his process, his philosophy, his commitment to environmental consciousness. When she walked away, Angela squeezed his shoulder. See, you belong here. The evening progressed like a dream. People examined his work with genuine appreciation, asked intelligent questions, discussed environmental impact and craftsmanship quality. Several took his newly printed business cards. By 9 o'clock, 3 pieces had sold. The dining table, a side table, the mirror frame. 4 clients had requested consultations about commissioned work. A sustainable furniture magazine wanted to interview him. James stood with Emma and Lucas, watching people appreciate what he'd created. His children leaned against him. Tired but glowing, Emma whispered, You did it, Daddy. He corrected gently. We did it, sweetheart. Miss Angela and me together. Angela joined them as the last clients left. Successful night. Very successful. I don't know how to thank you. James said, Thank me by keeping creating. You have real talent. James, the market is responding. Driving home. Lucas fell asleep against the window. Emma stayed awake, watching city lights pass. Mama would be proud, she said quietly. James's throat tightened. Yeah, baby, she would. Are we going to be okay now? He thought about the 3 sold pieces, the commission requests, the magazine interest, Angela's confidence, and the client's genuine appreciation. Yeah, he said. I think we really are. Emma smiled and closed her eyes. James drove through the winter night, his children sleeping, his work sold and valued, his partnership with Angela proving itself real. The wood had deserved another life. He'd given it one, and in doing so, he'd claimed his own. April arrived gentle and warm, winter finally releasing its grip. James stood in his new workshop, a rented space 3 times larger than his garage, with proper lighting and ventilation and room to imagine. 3 months since opening night. 3 months of steady orders and growing reputation. The business had exceeded even Angela's expectations. His reclaimed Origins pieces commanded premium prices. Clients willing to pay for environmental consciousness combined with genuine artistry. The partnership with Angela had settled into comfortable rhythm. He created. She marketed and sold. They split proceeds fairly, both benefiting from the other's expertise. Trust had replaced uncertainty. Respect had replaced doubt. James still used reclaimed materials exclusively, not from necessity anymore, but from conviction. The environmental impact mattered. The stories mattered. Giving discarded wood new purpose mattered. Saturday morning, Emma and Lucas arrived at the workshop to help. Emma organized scraps and offcuts. Lucas swept sawdust. Serious and careful, they'd become part of the business, learning through participation. "Dad!" Lucas held up a length of weathered pine. "Why don't you just buy new lumber? It would be easier." James set down his square and considered the question. Lucas deserved honest answers, not easy ones. "This wood has a story. Buddy, see these nail holes? This was part of a barn for maybe 80 years. Sheltered animals and hay, survived storms and seasons. Someone built that barn with their hands, raised their family around it." He ran his palm along the grain. Throwing it away would erase that history, but giving it new life that honors what it was while making it something new. Lucas nodded slowly, understanding dawning. "Like how Miss Angela saw your story when nobody else did." James smiled. His son was sharp, connecting threads others missed. "Exactly like that." Emma joined them, leaving her sorting, "And like how accepting help isn't weakness." "Where'd you learn that?" James asked. "From you, Daddy. You taught us that sometimes the bravest thing is trusting others, see what we can't see in ourselves." James pulled both children close. These lessons, these moments, mattered more than any furniture sale or magazine feature. Values passing from one generation to the next, wisdom earned through struggle. The afternoon stretched ahead, work waiting, a commissioned dining table for a young couple's first home, reclaimed oak from a demolished schoolhouse, carrying memories of children and learning forward into new life. James worked while his children organized and cleaned. The workshop smelled of sawdust and possibility. Spring sunshine filtered through windows, warming the space. His phone buzzed. Angela checking in about next week's delivery. He responded quickly, then returned to his work. The partnership had given him stability, but more than that, it had given him permission to call himself what he'd always been afraid to claim: an artist, a craftsman, someone whose work mattered beyond mere survival. Evening arrived softly. James finished for the day and locked the workshop. Emma and Lucas waited by the car. Tired but content. Driving home, they passed his old neighborhood. The garage where he'd worked through those desperate months sat dark now, converted to storage by new tenants. James remembered the cold nights, the uncertainty, the pride that had nearly cost him everything. He remembered Angela's business card, that first terrifying phone call, the choice between staying hidden and stepping forward. Sometimes grace arrived wearing professional clothes and carrying business cards. Sometimes salvation looked like partnership. Sometimes hope required trusting others to see what you couldn't see alone. He drove his children home to dinner, to homework, to evening routines made stable by steady income and growing success. But success hadn't changed his values. He still chose reclaimed wood over new, still honored origins while creating transformations, still taught his children that creativity and hard work could turn limitations into opportunities. The wood had been thrown away. James had given it another life. In doing so, he'd reclaimed his own, not through rescue or charity, but through partnership and perseverance, through accepting help when pride said refuse, through trusting that his work had value even when fear whispered otherwise. He pulled into his driveway as dusk settled. The workshop would wait until tomorrow. Tonight belonged to his children, to dinner, to the quiet peace of a life rebuilt from scraps and vision and stubborn hope. Inside, Emma set the table while Lucas washed his hands. James started dinner, movements practiced in calm. Through the window, spring evening glowed gentle and warm. The lamplight had guided him through darkness. The sawdust had hung like snow through desperate winters. But spring had arrived, carried on the patient work of hands that refused to stop building. Every piece of furniture told a story. His own story was written in reclaimed wood and second chances, in partnership accepted and pride transformed into wisdom. The wood deserved another life. So did he. And standing in his kitchen with his children close and his future unfolding, James finally believed it was true.